Hey. The DM's talking right now. All right, we're doing some exposition. Pay attention. I don't want to have to recap everything back from the whole session. You're about to learn that the evil king is evil secretly, and has a connection with the fighter's backstory. Hey, back here. Come back. I have you. All right, there we go. I don't care if your character sheet's on your phone. If I see you open another app, I swear to God, above table, I'm going to give you a 1d10 psychic damage each time you do so.
Carry my keys. This is why.
Why is your camera so off right now?
You did the camera. I didn't even touch it.
It's fine. We're keeping it.
Yeah, you're going to have to keep it. You did it. You live with it.
Welcome, players, DMs, and TTRPG enthusiasts to Above Table. What do you mean we have to reschedule? This is the third week in a row. Wait, this weekend? Perfect. Oh, guys, that's a perfect transition to what we're going to be talking about today. I have everything planned, always. Is anyone else easily distracted by moving keys?
You and the baby.
Oh, so just me. Got it. All right, it's just me. Over here? Not to the side.
Don't reflect the mirror, though. That, blinds people.
Today's first subject for Above Table, a mixed experienced table. And what I mean by that is if anyone's ever played as a player or DM'd a table where you've had some players who are good at the game, understand the rules, maybe are really adept with role-playing, are very in tune and very respectful of the DM's time as well as the other players. And then, of course, you have the other half that don't. Has anyone ever run into that particular situation in the past?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, jeez.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. I usually feel bad because part of, from the DM perspective, with a mixed group table, I'm I have my more experienced players, and I'm yeah, I'm trying to tailor this to everyone's best experience. And then, on the other hand, I sometimes forget there are new players, so I'll just say things and keep going, and they're like, wait, what does that mean? I'm I'm sorry, I should explain. But then also sometimes those players don't know how to share the table, and I start getting annoyed, and I'm I know it comes from a place of joy of the game, of oh, I have this new character, and I'm so excited to play it out, and I'm but there's 8 people at this table. We gotta share the time.
8's a lot, Titan.
8's a lot.
I don't have 8. I cap out at 6.
Okay.
But, I have had, plus myself, 8 people at a table.
Oh, valid.
Yeah.
Nick, I feel like you've been DMing as well as running TTRPG, GMing. Probably have more miles on us altogether. So have you ever ran a table or played at a table where half of them were really good and the other half were just kind of fumbling?
Yeah, I think the rarity, maybe there's a good amount of groups, especially with 5e, where it's everybody's new, so you're all learning together. That can be a good experience, but I mean, on the positive side, I think it can help the DM a lot if you have 1 or 2 more experienced players, if they're on the same page as the DM. Then they can be a rules assistant. They can help other people, nudge other people along. Maybe they'll be more patient because they understand the challenges of learning the rules. A lot of this is it could be good or bad depending on the individual player and their individual personalities. I think it does require just patience and understanding from the group to get people up to speed. I think it gets talked about a lot in board games, where if you have 1 or 2, if it's a cooperative board game, say, and 1 or 2 people are more experienced, there's always the danger that they're going to run the game and the other ones are just kind of going to be observing and not really an active participant on the same level. And then that tends to be a not great experience for everybody. It takes work to overcome that, for sure.
Yeah, I think with at least the games that I've run, it's kind of the opposite, where the more experienced players are more willing to sit back and let the newbies kind of have their full run with it. But then there's also that challenge of like, okay, hold on, rein it back. We still have more people who have to have their turn.
And have you been part of a team where you thought some people were fumbling it, or you had some experience with that?
I can't name the thing because it's public.
Okay. There has been a moment.
And you've been a part of it, and we had to carry said person like through the one shot. So, and I think we all thought that way. I don't think you two were part of it. It was an older one. That's all I'm gonna say.
All right, I don't think I can. I don't think I can hint it for me to understand it. So I'll leave it be.
Mm-hmm.
I recently had. This is sort of the inspiration of the subject altogether. I recently just had an experience where I was running a game for a bunch of new people I've never played with before, but I have worked with them. Actually, I'm gonna cut that. I have this is fire. This is
Loading.
Yeah. There's gonna be a full edit. No. It was inspired from a group of people that I ran a game for, and I don't think they've ever played the system before. But I know of them, and so it was interesting to see how they role played for the first time, and it was interesting. It was very interesting where some people took reins, like you were saying, Nick. There's like people who would take reins. I didn't get lucky to have like the super experienced people who took sort of the seat back, like you were talking about, Titan. But man, it's a shame when a group of people come together and we organize and we're ready to put on this amazing story for ourselves and people beyond, and people are either quiet or try to talk over each other and try to be the hero. And that's the biggest problem I realize for new people, is they always think that I'm the hero of the story.
Yeah.
Bro, you had a couple other problems that I could just audibly hear, but
Oh boy. Oh man. This doesn't come out for like 4 months. It's fine.
it will have been moved past.
Yeah, it'll happen in the past. Yeah, it was just like a lot of tech problems too. By the way, if you know that you're going into a digital landscape, please check
That's
your stuff.
shit.
I was rightfully annoyed. By the way, shout out to Nick wearing the Legati shirt.
Yeah, let me ask you, Mike, in general about this situation, because you, by virtue of what you do, run a lot of one-shots or smaller campaigns for mixed groups. And over the past like 5-10 years, Session Zero has become a really popular idea. The idea that when you're going to play with a new group of people, have a Session Zero where you discuss what the game will be, what expectations are, limits, and any content warnings or things people don't want in the game, and just make sure everybody's on the same page. With established groups and people that are like friends, like a formal Session Zero is maybe less important. But the tricky thing is, I think with one shots or with your pickup groups, Session Zero would help a lot, but logistically it just doesn't work. You can't have an extra session a lot of the times where you're not playing. You're just going to talk about the game, right?
Yeah.
How do you ever get a chance to address that? Do you ever get a chance to do like expectation setting and things like that?
So it's funny. I have 3 types of games that I run. Maybe 4.
4.
Yeah.
Thank you.
But types.
Yeah.
There's a lot more games. Obviously, I have one shots, which are usually about a 3 to 4 hour experience, in which, yeah, you're right. We don't really have a Session Zero. But the great thing that the platform that I'm currently on, there are like expectations of what type of engagements you're about to get into. So there's like heavy combat, light role play, a lot of puzzles, and those are sliders that people can also filter when they start to look for a DM for these pickup things. Also, there's a large blurb I always put of like, this is the overall story. This is how character creation should work, just so that I don't have to walk people through a session 0 of like, your character should have a rare item in their inventory. It's already listed, and I just have to double check it when they jump to the table. I specifically build a lot of my one-shots to be more of like, hey, you're going to roleplay with each other, and there's probably going to be a fight, and probably some roleplay with an NPC. It's a 4-hour experience, and there's 5 of you. It's going to last. So I'm very lucky when one-shots, it's like there's not a lot to go over. There is a moment prior to the game, which I usually jump like a half an hour early and be like, hey, I don't think we're going to touch on any touchy subjects because of the matter of this one shot and what it revolves around. But if something does trigger you, there are like safety tools that we have, like sending a letter X in my DM tells me stop. I don't like this, and I actually got sent a letter X for the first time like 3 months ago. I was really surprised.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the first types. The other ones I roll are long form campaigns, much like Trials of Intier. Those ones definitely had a session 0. We went over a lot of stuff. And then I have a miniature campaign, which is about 8 sessions. And then I have mini campaigns, which are about 3 sessions. Mini campaigns don't have session 0s. Session 0s, it is just me talking for 45 minutes, telling them this is what you're going to expect for the next 3 sessions. And the medium sessions do have session 0s. So it's a give or take depending on what I'm doing. If I can't dedicate more than 4 sessions, I'm not giving you a session 0, but I will talk about it, about limits.
Yeah, that makes me think, because you'd mentioned the point of like new players expecting themselves to kind of be the heroes of the story. When do you think that stops? Because I know like there's a point where experienced players stop doing that.
I was going to say argue the opposite, because me and Mike have seen people where that does not stop.
That's true. That's fair. That's really fair.
I think what really clicked for me, and I don't know, Nick, you were my first DM, so you could tell me whether I had these tendencies to be like, I'm the hero of the story. I don't think I was. But I could imagine other people who love a hobby dive into that hobby. So I can imagine people who love D&D and love TTRPG as a whole probably jump into TTRPG and D&D content also. And there are some amazing, hopefully they run into some really good content creators. And I have seen some where they go, hey, good example is Travis Willingham from Critical Role. It's like, this guy's an amazing role player for these reasons, is because he's the best cheerleader. And there are so many examples of, like Emily Axford from Dimension 20 going, oh my God, you should do that, and egging on people to do it. And unfortunately, they just need to see role models of people who are super excited to pump people up, and hopefully they grasp onto that concept. Because I think we all know, a lot of us have worked customer service in some form or fashion. We work to the public. Telling people that they're doing it wrong never works. It never stays.
Yeah, I think that the trick is, and I think I've been fairly fortunate. I don't think I've played long term with anybody where this really is an issue, but it's like, there's the dual thing of like, what are your role-playing motivations? What kind of character do you want to play? All of that. Like we talked about before, the like edgy loner archetype or whatever, and how in the right hands, totally fine. You can totally play an edgy loner that doesn't make the game difficult, doesn't try to go off and do their own thing in a way that's detrimental to like the group experience. And in that same way, you could play the like paladin who wants to be the hero, the hero of destiny. Like, I think as you become a more experienced player, a lot of players start to find that less interesting. But for some people, especially I think in your first RPG, your first campaign, that's going to be one of the archetypes that makes the most sense. I'm going to be a champion fighter, or I'm going to be a paladin or whatever, and this is what I'm going to do, and I'm the hero, right? And I think that's totally fine in the hands of a player who like gets the social aspect of it. That just because your character thinks they're the hero, the world may not agree, or even if the world agrees, that doesn't mean you're always in the spotlight. A lot of Lord of the Rings is not Aragorn, right? On screen, right? He is the hero of destiny. Like by the end, it's almost like, it's not cliche because it was written so long ago, but like, you know, aspects of it would seem cliche. But there's so much of that story is spent on other characters, right? And that's, you know, you have to give time for the other player characters and see how their archetypes interact with yours and all that. But I think what we're really talking about here is people that just don't get the social contract of the game. Talking too much or not really being engaged, or, you know, I'm going to kill this innkeeper. Like that kind of garbage that is just exhausting. And it's like, you know, that you can set the expectations in session 0, but it's also like, you know, it's do you get it or not? If you go to like a pickup basketball game, is somebody like elbowing other people in the face? Like some pickup basketball games are like that. Some groups play like that. But in general, that's like frowned upon here. And like, can we have a conversation about it? Or is this, that's the way you want to play? This is not going to work, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Or another way to do it, beyond just like learning that social aspect and contract, as well as maybe even finding other individuals and players who are kind of being the example of what you should be doing, or at least to a certain degree. Obviously, it's not fair to say you should be like this person. But definitely like you should take notes and sort of, if you'd like to emulate, like this is the best way to play, is to emulate a little bit of these great concepts. And this is what I did during my the aforementioned game that I was rubbing my temples. Was sometimes you, as the DM, if someone's acting as the hero, sometimes you just gotta really humble someone. Not on purpose. On a great example is I had a player who I painted a scenario where I was like, you guys see the danger in front of you, and probably the right decision right now, because it's way out of your depth, is to defend yourself, to pull back and find a way to stop the force. And I had one player who was like, no, I'm the hero. I'm racing alone across the way to take this thing head on. And I was like, all right, you get humbled, because that's how the story would play out, and you get slashed to hell. And they were like near death, and I was like, it was one of those moments where I was like, you might want to run. And DM, we all played that role. We were like, hey, player, I don't want to see this go south.
Sign.
You should run. Like, we're doing everything but telling them leave. And they kept on doing this thing. And they were like, no, I could find a weakness. And I was like, okay, I will give you a choice. You can either stay and find a weakness, in which then they'll have a turn, or you can run and save your butt. And it was then they clocked, oh, I can't do multiple things. I should run. And so they were left with the rest of the little one-shot. I think I stole a thing from you, Nick, which is you have limited effect on all of your things you're doing now. Because now it's like, you can try to be the hero, but you messed up so badly that if you're going to try to hit, you've got broken arms. You got noodle arms. Sometimes you got to be humbled, players.
The contrast, though, Mike.
Yeah.
From what I know, what one shot you ran, and I was in the other one, so that's why I was like, the contrast in players were totally opposite.
Yeah, that's a good rule, I think, in Blades in the Dark. In general, is the effect. You know, every role has position and effect, and I think that you guys have experienced that. But it's also like, it's nice that it's baked into the rules. Is like you're fighting something that's a much higher tier than you, and you're barely scratching it. Or if it's high enough, you just can't do anything. Like you'll swing, you're not having an effect. Like you're not going to punch the dragon to death with your bare hands. You're not going to shoot a spacecraft out of the sky with a pistol, right? At a certain point, the fiction just dictates what you're capable of. And Blades just puts that in the rules as like tier. And there's limits to how much something of a lower tier can affect something of a higher tier. That's popular in mech games too. I've listened to some actual plays of like anime style mech games. And a lot of times they have defined tiers of like, what tier is your ship and what tier is your robot? What tier is your weapon? You can get special abilities that let you like hit a tier or two higher. I think this is in like Lancer and maybe Scum and Villainy isn't really a mech game, but things like that. And that can just be good to bake it in the thing. And so you can just tell a player, hey, one day you'll be tier 5 and you can fight that tier 5 thing. Right now, if you fight it, it will crush you because here are the rules, right? It's not me just being arbitrary. There's a rule for how powerful this thing is compared to you.
I'd like to point out that you don't need to humble us in Blades, Nick. Our roles humble our
humble you
asses
really
real
much.
hard.
I don't have to do it because it's part of the system, right? It's part of the system in a way that it's not in something more binary like D&D, right? D&D, you have a fight and maybe you lose the fight, right? Or you miss a lot and it's like, I can't hit this thing, or I get hit once and get knocked out. Blades, it's, there's partial successes. There's things that are compounding on themselves. The system encourages, finding your limits, pushing your limits. Like, you're doing it right if you're right on that edge all the time. You feel like you're out over your skis and you barely have a control of the situation. Like that is ideally where the game is supposed to operate. And that's really exciting.
So Mike and I are doing it right with constantly almost traumaing out every fucking session.
Yes, everybody having no stress left at the end of every score is, I think, the system working as intended, yes.
It's why, and I did this to you guys too, when we began Ventir, as well as my other long-form campaigns, I've introduced this concept of a story moment. And I did it because there were so many of these wild examples. And of course, the fact that I'm in this position where I am getting a lot of random people and getting them together, it's just, story moments are discussions. And that really helps out with D&D because it could be one of those things where it's like, I'm going to try to convince and persuade the king to give me every gold piece he has. I rolled a nat 20. What do you say now, DM? I got over 30. I would have to, it's even before the roll, it's like, okay, let's take a stop and think about this with a story moment. I can't think in any scenario, even with a natural 20, if you were the most convincing person in the world, that you would convince this person to give you everything they have. And that way, because it was built in that function to stop that, to preemptively stop that. But it's turned into a lot of like how you were talking about, there are limits and great moments where I can go, hey, wait, story moment. You're lighting a net that's holding a bunch of metal stuff on the roof. It's not just, I think the fact that it's 60 feet up, it's going to do a lot more damage than you were hoping for. So it could work in your favor, or it might not. You might have limited or great. And that's the whole point of a story moment, is to put everything on the board.
I think that's a great mitigator for that, because I was actually going to say, that reminded me, with a lot of new players, I hear a lot more of, is there a check for that? Can I check for that? Can I roll for that? And it's, a lot of it, I as a DM want to be like, no, figure it out. I say obvious BS lie, and it's like, are they lying? I'm like, do you think they're lying? Or that would normally be more of a check, but stuff of that nature, of specifically between PCs too, of is this other player character lying? I'm like, you can roll to contest that, but also use your intuition.
I stopped, and I think I don't know if you guys notice this, but when it comes to insight checks, which has become my bane now, I hate
in both campaigns.
In all campaigns, I hate insight checks, because majority of the time people use it only to see if someone's lying or someone's holding back information. So what I've now relegated to insight checks is if you get a really good insight check, you see a lot of small motions. Like you get to see, like you ask a question of like, are you sure you're going to be there for us? And you see there is a swallow, there's a twitch of the eye. You watch their hands almost start to fidget. And those are all probably well-known tells of someone who's probably concerned, but I'm never going to tell you that they're lying. I'm going to give you as higher you roll, the more information I'm going to compound, which will give you the answer, but I will never say that they're lying anymore. I hate insight checks. It's the worst.
Yeah.
Let's go on to the next subject. Great. I'm still great at transitions, everyone. That is representation. If you're a DM and adding in some NPCs, or you're a player and you've thought about doing representation, I think Mosted was my biggest campaign to date. Obviously, we're still working on Ventir, but I think I added a lot. And now that's a point, is to make sure that everyone had a chance to shine, every community and every walks of life. But is that a thought process for the other DMs at the table here, where you goes, you know what? I'm going to make this NPC, and I think they should be X, Y, or Z. Is that a thought process?
Yeah, definitely for me at least. In large part because, if I'm being completely honest, I get bored of making the same character over and over, and so I'm like, I might as well expand my options, right? And that allows for, like, at least for me, for a more engaging story, or like an engaging character, because I was able to pull from different things that like I hadn't up until that point, or didn't as much. And I've seen a lot of success with that. But also it's one where, so I take a lot of personal inspiration from mythologies and histories around the world. I think they're all incredibly fascinating. So I tried to bake that in to the world of like, that way there's kind of an already set, like, oh, over here is going to be sort of based off of this vibe, and so that will kind of be this corner of the world or that corner of the world, and then I can mix in hodgepodge whatever I want in the middle. Just makes it more engaging for me as a DM.
Yeah, spice of life.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't think I do. I think I accidentally do it, Mike. We talked about that. I think, I did purposely do it in the one shot, but that was because I was trying to have some representation.
Which one shot?
In Lunar Cafe.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's some indigenous representation. Hell yeah.
But I also don't like playing something I'm not, because I don't know where the line is. So like that one I felt more comfortable, and even then I thought I was pushing it a little bit.
DMs, we get a lot more freedom with that. It is definitely a gray line, and I know that there's been countless conversations about it. Like, can a white presenting male cisgender man play as a person of color who's feminine presenting and is also queer presenting? Like, can you do that? Well, if I only played white guys, I would hate this world.
Like that would be such a boring world.
I don't want to be in this world. This sucks.
Exactly as you are.
The two famous characters, two favorite characters from all of my campaigns, both Gina Lee, last name is Lee, definitely sort of a representation of like Asian culture, and Moscow, who is very like brown skinned, is very much like an African American descent. They're the most famous characters that we have. They got shirts, everyone. Almost. One of them coming soon.
I also liked Raimi, though. I thought that was a good representation.
There was an NPC that I don't think Nick and Titan know, but there's a character named Raimi Hardy, who is very much of the like African American descent, like bald hair, not bald head, female represent. Did she have bald hair?
No, she had she had a mohawk thing because she was.
Oh right, there was two images. I went with that one, but she was handy capable. She had no arms. She was like cut off from like I think where the biceps were, but she was also an astral self monk who could make her own astral arms. So it almost became like this cool aspect of like you don't see them, but they're there.
And she will kick your ass.
She was such a great character. I loved her. But yeah, it's a point sometimes where you're like, yeah. I think even in Ventir, there have been non-binary people. We had the cook, the chef River, who was non-binary, who was beloved by all because they were just a pretty person.
Yeah, I thought that was a good plot point. I think River's a good example of something that I run into a lot. And like, we are making, for Ventir and stuff, you are making something ostensibly for public consumption, right? You're making it to be a good game, but also you're making it like people will be watching it. So that, I think you do have to think about that aspect of it, but it perhaps is a delicate subject matter, but when people, I would say the shitheads in the gaming community would say like, oh, why do you have to come out and say this? Why do you have to make such a big deal about character trait X, Y, or Z, or like that this person is non-binary or whatever, right? Why do you have to make such a big deal about it? And I think as a DM, sometimes it can feel a little ham-fisted or on the nose because you do have to say it. Yeah. And it is the weird thing where it's like people do have a default in their head, and that is a problem, right? And if you don't say it, what kind of person are you picturing? Right? Who are you picturing if there's just some guy, right? Okay, what are the details about him? And so if I specify this or that, does that change the picture that you had in your head in a meaningful way? And you do have to say it, right? And you have the classic non-binary problem of, are we going to use they as a pronoun and it's going to be complicated? The communication's going to get muddy because we're saying they a lot, right? And it's just not a perfect solution, me understanding who you're referring to all the time, right? And like, if it was a movie or whatever, if it's a movie, you just put somebody on screen and you get it, right? But I'll use our Blades campaign as an example. Like first we went in our D&D campaign, Thomag, I mean, we had people from, all different skin tones and whatever, but it was set in one city, and that city was primarily human. And, without being said, it's primarily like a European-ish, like Venice-influenced city. So a lot of times those would be the names I would pull from, and that would be like the default person. Now we're in our Blades in the Dark campaign. I'm not using the setting in the book. I'm doing a pretty significant spin on it, and our setting is it's heavily influenced by Morocco. I've been reading a lot of Moroccan history around the book and around the game, and pulling names from Arabic cultures and Middle Eastern Mediterranean cultures, and the separate conversation about how much of this is cultural appropriation and how much of it is just I don't want to play in just another generic European city. Yeah. Right? But like 90% or more of the population of the city, what I want to say is like in Morocco, they would look like an average person you meet in Morocco, which doesn't look like an average person you would meet in Los Angeles or in Venice or whatever. But it feels weird that I have to keep saying it, that I have to say it. Like, I wonder, when can I stop specifying? But I want people to have the right kind of person when I describe them. Like I want our mental images to be generally matching. Not that it doesn't matter fictionally. It very rarely is going to matter fictionally but like I want to paint the picture, right? And the picture is not like we were in Venice or like we were in Los Angeles. Like the architecture is different, the lighting's different, the food is different, and the people are different, right? And it's how often you have to say it and how you say it, I think is a challenge for the DM. I think, us on this call, I'd like to think we're well-meaning and we're trying to do it in the right way, but it's a weird particular niche problem.
Yeah, it is.
Of like in a conversation, I'm telling you a story, and I don't want to say, I don't want to be weird about it, but I also want to tell you what kind of person this is, right? Because I think it's part of the story.
It's valid. I mean, yeah. It's just a hope that eventually, when you present the information in front of people, especially when it comes to like direct areas, excuse me, that you move forward and you don't have to express that over and over again. Obviously, that's the dream. That's the dream. But I like incorporating different perspectives and different sort of cultures and different lifestyles, because then it's like, oh right, okay. But like again, most famous NPCs from the 2 campaigns, Gene Lee and Moscow, that's not their defining trait. They just are that. And what's beyond that is, man, Gene Lee's such a valley girl, while the other one is like, he's a little bit of a flirt. It's like,
little bit.
Yeah. And it doesn't have to be anything further than that. I think it's important. I'm really happy that we do that, definitely as DMs and players.
I think to Nick's point, unfortunately, yeah, you have to deal with the shitheads, but as somebody that, obviously I'm a lot lighter than some people of my nationality, but it's like to be represented in a space where you're normally not is more of a nice thing to see, and like you get super excited to see it versus the 1 or 5 assholes that are behind you like that aren't happy about it. They can keep being unhappy about it.
Yeah, they can stay angry. That's fine with me. All right. Well, to cap everything off, guys, as per usual, I always have a TTRPG horror story. This one's a little funnier, or at least in my mind, because of the way the title's been presented. And now we all get to make a decision whether or not this person is a problem player. That's the title of the story is, Am I the problem? So I like this because I've seen Am I the asshole on Reddit, and a lot of those stories are either it is yes you are or no you're not, or sometimes it does become into a debate of like, well, maybe, I don't know. So we're gonna cap today off with this one. Am I the problem player? I've been playing in a new campaign for a few sessions and everything has been going fine so far. We'll never run into any problems ever. The last session, someone in our group accidentally killed a person in a village where we were sent to, and so we decided to flee. Happens. Guess. We also hypothesized that we would be followed. So, people on the run now. On our way back home, we saw a rider behind us, and not knowing who he was, we took out our weapons, and when he saw this, he screamed something about bandits and turned around. That's a very valid reaction.
Oh yeah.
Good on the DM. That's pretty valid. Here's where I probably fucked up and where I got accused as a murder hobo. At least they're open to the idea. I told him to stay or we'll shoot him. I didn't want him to escape in case the people from the village were looking for us. And obviously, I just wanted to talk to him in case he had some important information for us. And I knew that there was a huge fight/feud in the village, which is why we were sent there in the first place. A lot of story elements and situations piling up right now. After he turned around to run away, I shot his horse. Okay. Oh shoot, which made him fall down and break his leg.
Ooh.
I ran over and healed it, and we tried to talk to him. Obviously, he didn't want to talk to me, so I went away and let the other ones figure it out. And yes, I know what I did was stupid, but it was the only option I saw in that moment to stop him. I'm gonna pause there. I can actually understand that. If the DM's like, you see this guy wearing armor and he's riding, you're riding across alone from city to city through forests or valleys, it's like, you may want to protect yourself. You're holding a sword. And I guess I could see where this guy's like, shit, we gotta stop him. Hey, stop, I'll shoot you. I'm gonna aim for the horse, not you.
I've made really dumb decisions as a player before, just like in the heat of paranoia or otherwise just like in the story you're like, oh shit, I have to make a decision right now. I think this is the best decision, and then you do it and you're like, ooh, I could have done better though.
Yeah. And then the wizard's like, I could have just held person. You're like,
I didn't know that.
It says here, I just feared that he would turn around or ride past us, especially after he said that we were bandits. I honestly didn't think that he would stop, or if we told him that we weren't bandits. Why should he believe us in that case? Okay, you're thinking it, I get it. After the session, I was accused twice by our DM of being a murder hobo. I told him my reasoning for my actions, but conceded that I probably should have solved it in a different way. And I was obviously told that I could have solved it in a different way from other people as well. But with little information and finding the perfect solution to a problem at hand is hard sometimes, in my opinion. So what do you think? Am I a problem player, a murder hobo in this case? And yes, I will try to improve myself. Thank you.
My question is this the same person that accidentally killed the other guy too, and that's why they think they're a murder hobo?
It sounded like it was a different player, right?
Yeah.
Like one of the other players or something?
They're like
Feels
the
like they would
group.
have mentioned that.
Yes.
Yeah, because I was going to
Then it's
say...
a trend. Then it's a spree.
Exactly. I was going to say murder hobo, I feel like implies this has to happen more than once.
There's a pattern.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This to me sounds like a DM that just wants to use the phrase murder hobo. That's not what this is.
Yeah.
This was an incident that happened on the road. These sort of things happen. It's maybe unfortunate. I think every step of the way is totally something a reasonable character could have done.
Yeah.
They shot at the horse. They didn't shoot at the guy. Like, they tried to shoot out the tires of the car.
Yeah.
Also, the weird thing where, like, situations like this become much less serious in a world where magical healing exists. Like, I'll shoot the guy in the head and I'll get over to him and I'll heal him before he dies. Like, would he really be as pissed about that? Like, it's... I don't think there's anything wrong with what the player did. I think that it's just an interesting situation. I'm sure this kind of situation has happened millions of times in real life. Very similar situations to this.
Oh my God, I'm sorry. I didn't thought you were someone else.
It's a realistic misunderstanding and people are tense and armed. This unfortunate situation, I think it could just make for a good story. I think the DM is potentially overreacting. If there aren't like non-combatants. This is not Skyrim, right? Where you can't attack the children or whatever. Like, there's not rules against shooting at some random dude's horse.
Yeah.
And I think it kind of made sense in that scenario.
The horse will remember this.
Yeah, the horse is pretty pissed.
Someone I like in terms of comments, they're kind of agreeing with a lot of the sentiment, which is you're not a murder hobo. And the biggest reason is a trademark version of the murder hobo would have just walked up and shot the guy.
Yeah.
They wouldn't feel bad. They were like, I'm so sorry.
Yeah, I think the phrase murder hobo implies, like, the reason it's a problem, like it's also like just a joke that's what a lot of D&D parties are, is they do violence and they don't have a home and they just wander around and they do violence in different towns, right? That's a joke. But the reason like a murder hobo party can be an issue is they don't seriously engage with the world as if it were a real place. They were, why wouldn't we just kill everybody and rob everybody? There's literally no reason not to. We'll fight the whole guard of this town. And the only reason we wouldn't is if the guard's like a red dragon and can beat us. Right? That kind of like childlike understanding of the only reason not to do violence and take what we want is if there's somebody bigger and stronger than us. That's like the problematic murder hobo. That the game just falls apart. You can't tell a meaningful story if that's how the players are responding to it. Again, it's like Skyrim or something else where people do a playthrough. I'm just going to kill everybody in every town and see what happens, right? It can be an interesting experiment, but it's not a good RPG experience.
Yeah.
I actually just recently, because I started this new long-term campaign and we do have a couple new like 5e players, integrating in with the players I was with in my previous long-term campaign. And there was a really funny moment of, I dropped some bandits on them, like someone going through the rowboat that belonged to one of the players that they're super protective of, and that was also what they were going to be taking to go on their mission. So they were like, how do we deal with these bandits? Immediately turned to violence. Great, fine. But we were split, so 3 members of the party were like super opposed. They said it outright, I don't murder people, that's my line. Or otherwise just like super anxious, don't want to hurt anybody kind of thing. And then the other 3 were like, screw it, they gotta go. And there was a moment where one of the newer players was like, okay, they're all unconscious, I'm gonna go through and like finish them off. I'm gonna double tap all of these bandits. And I'm sitting here, I'm like, okay, that's fine. And she had to like look around at the party members' faces of like horror and shock. And she's like, wait, do we not kill people? Wait, hold on. Like, what are the rules here? And in character, it was like, well, you gotta look around. Some of your party doesn't, but like some of your party's fine with it. So you have to have that conversation of, are we murderers? Are we not?
I mean, that might be a great story moment of maybe your character is fine with killing while others are not, and it's like, are we not killing?
And that's what it turned into. It turned into the in-character version of like, wait, was this not okay? How are we approaching this as a newly formed group?
Yeah, that's really interesting, and it is also like a, what world are we in right here? I think a lot of people like. Okay, aside from just this is a game, we're just going to do violence and kill people, whatever, like that's often the default, but it's like, is this like medieval Europe, like so many of these games are, where like life is kind of cheap and there's not an effective crime fighting force? And if you killed somebody on the road, there's really no consequence to it. And so what do you do? Like that can be an interesting moral thing. But on this subject, I have to shout out again, Blades in the Dark as a really good after D&D try this game. And even though we're playing a different version of the world, we've kept the whole thing where like, if someone dies, alarms go off in the city and people like the ghost cops show up, because when someone dies, there's not an afterlife to go to anymore. Ghosts just like hostile ghosts come out of the body when someone dies. It's a big deal when someone dies violently. And in our session last night, 3 people died accidentally, but that was our, we've played.
We had nothing to do with it.
We've played for months, many sessions. Prior to last night, how many people had you guys killed? Do you know?
Intentionally,
I saved one with the drug pin, like
intentionally, like 3.
You had killed 2 people.
Okay.
Across 8 different missions, 2 people had died. Last night, 3 people died. Right?
Intentional.
Did we kill a guard that we drugged? No, right? We just locked him up in the closet.
No, you didn't. It was you exploded the guy accidentally in your first mission.
Oh, that's right.
You exploded the guy in the toilet. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right? But like, shout out to Blades for making people really think about every death.
Yeah.
Because killing gives you more heat, complicates the situation, sets off alarms, so cops come running, like, and that's the thing, for some players you kind of have to build reasons in the world why death matters, because people are like, well, these people aren't real, we're just playing a game. There has to be a consequence for some people for why don't I just kill this random person. And in Blades, it's because you're going to go to jail very quickly if you do that.
Or you could just trauma out a bunch of times and now we're all a little fucked.
First of all, I'm the only one who has 2
Baron
traumas.
walking
All right,
up
let's
to
move
somebody
forward.
and stabbing somebody in the throat and just being like, okay, we're doing that.
But hey, here's to maybe I've saw 2 games submitted, Nick. We play something, explore a little bit further in the TTRPG space.
That would be great. Got so many of them. Would love to try out some of the weirder ones. Yeah.
Hell yeah. But yeah, so I think that is what we're going to call today's Above Table. Thank you so much for joining us. And we will check you guys next time. Bye.